Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation Man. Dale Morrison had built his life the same way he built houses, with precision, patience, and an unshakable foundation. At 42, he owned Morrison Construction, the most respected building company in Millbrook County. His calloused hands had framed over 300 homes, and his keen eye for detail had earned him a reputation that stretched across 3 states. Dale's own foundation had been forged in the coal mines of West Virginia, where his father had died in a cave-in when Dale was 16. That tragedy taught him 2 things. Life could crumble in an instant, and a man's word was the only thing that truly lasted. He'd worked double shifts at a lumber yard to put himself through trade school, never taking shortcuts, never compromising on quality. When he met Linda Hayes at a county fair 15 years ago, she'd been everything he thought he wanted: blonde, vivacious, and seemingly impressed by his growing success. She was 23 then, working as a receptionist at a dental office, but her dreams were bigger than her paycheck. Dale saw ambition in her green eyes and mistook it for the same drive that had built his business. Their marriage had produced Kevin, now 14, and what Dale believed was a comfortable life in their custom-built colonial on Maple Ridge. The house sat on 5 acres, Dale's sanctuary, where he'd taught Kevin to use tools and understand that honest work was the backbone of character. But on this Father's Day morning, as Dale sat in his workshop organizing his tools with military precision, his phone shattered the peaceful silence. "Dad!" Kevin's voice was strangled with tears. "Dad, I need you." Dale's blood chilled. Kevin was at his mother's sister's house for the weekend, 50 miles away in Riverside. The boy never cried, hadn't since he was 8, and fell from his bike, breaking his wrist. "What's wrong, son?" "Mom, she told Aunt Carol that you abandoned us. She said you never send money, that we're struggling because you don't care." Kevin's voice cracked. "She said you only care about your business and that new house you're building. Is that true, Dad? Did you really abandon us?" Dale's grip tightened on his phone. 4 or 5 years since Linda had asked for space and moved into the downtown apartment he'd paid for, Dale had sent $3,000 monthly. Not court-ordered support. They weren't even legally separated, but money Linda claimed she needed for Kevin's expenses and her own living costs. "Kevin, listen to me carefully. I have never, not once, failed to provide for you or your mother. I've sent money every month, and I have the records to prove it. But Mom said, your mother is lying." The words came out harsher than Dale intended, but 14 years of building his patience had been eroded by Linda's manipulation. "I'm coming to get you. Stay right there." Dale's Ford F-258 up the highway miles as his mind raced. Linda had been playing games for years, canceling Kevin's weekends at the last minute, making excuses about school events Dale supposedly forgot, painting him as an absent father. But this was different. This was war. He'd built his business on trust and reputation. He'd never cheated a client, never cut corners, never broken his word. And he'd expected the same loyalty from his family. The fact that Linda would poison his own son against him crossed a line that Dale Morrison didn't even know existed until that moment. When he reached Carol's modest ranch house, Kevin ran to him with tears streaming down his face. At 14, he was already showing Dale's broad shoulders and Linda's sharp features. But right now, he looked like the little boy who used to fall asleep in Dale's lap while they watched baseball games. "I'm sorry I doubted you, Dad. When Mom said those things." Dale pulled his son close, feeling the boy's thin frame shake with confused emotion. "You have nothing to apologize for. But this ends today." The drive back to Millbrook was silent except for the hum of the diesel engine and the sound of Dale's mind calculating. By the time they reached the city limits, he'd made his decision. Linda's downtown apartment was in a converted Victorian that Dale had actually helped renovate 3 years earlier, a detail that now felt like bitter irony. He parked in front of the building and turned to Kevin. "Stay in the truck. This conversation is between your mother and me. Dad, maybe we should just..." "Son, I've spent 5 years trying to keep the peace for your sake. But there comes a time when a man has to draw a line in the sand. Today is that day. Dale climbed the familiar stairs to apartment 3B, his work boots echoing against the hardwood he'd helped install. When Linda opened the door, she was wearing a silk robe that cost more than most people made in a week. A robe Dale's money had undoubtedly purchased. "Dale, what are you doing here?" Her voice carried forced surprise, but her eyes held something else. Guilt, maybe, or fear. "Where's the money, Linda?" She stepped back, and Dale noticed a man's leather jacket draped over the chair. Expensive leather, not the kind a working man wore. "What money?" "I don't know what you're talking about." $3,000 a month for 5 years. $180,000, Linda. "Where is it?" Her face flushed, and she glanced nervously toward the bedroom. "You're being dramatic. I've used it for Kevin, for living expenses. Kevin just called me crying, thinking I'd abandoned him because his mother told him I never send money." Dale's voice was deadly calm, the tone he used when explaining to a contractor that they'd just made a career-ending mistake. "You want to explain to me how spending my money translates to telling our son I don't support him?" The bedroom door opened, and a man emerged, buttoning his shirt. Dale recognized him immediately, Troy Brennan, who ran a high-end auto detailing business and drove a cherry red Corvette like he was still 25 instead of pushing 40. "Morning, Dale." Troy's smirk was practiced, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "Linda, maybe you should tell him." "Tell me what?" Linda's composure cracked completely. "Dale, we didn't plan for this to happen. Troy and we've been seeing each other for 2 years. We're in love." 2 years. Dale processed this information with the same methodical approach he used for complex building problems. "So you've been taking my money while playing house with him?" "It's not like that," Troy interjected, stepping closer with misplaced confidence. "Linda deserves better than being married to a man who's married to his work. She deserves someone who appreciates her." Dale studied Troy with the same intensity he brought to examining a foundation before demolition. Average height, soft hands, the kind of man who'd never built anything that lasted. The kind of man who took shortcuts. "You appreciate her so much that you let her take money from her husband to fund your relationship." "Dale, please," Linda stepped between them. "Let's be civilized about this. We can work out an arrangement." Dale held up his hand, and Linda fell silent. In that moment, she remembered why she'd been attracted to him in the first place. The quiet authority that made subcontractors stop talking when he walked onto a job site. "You're absolutely right. We can work out an arrangement." Dale's voice was almost gentle. "But it's going to be my arrangement on my terms, and it starts today." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Linda, I want you to remember something. I built our house with my own hands. I built half the houses in this county. I know how to take things apart just as well as I know how to put them together. Are you threatening me?" Dale smiled, but it never reached his eyes. "No, Linda, I'm educating you. There's a difference." As he walked down the stairs, Dale could hear Troy's voice rising in panic and Linda's sharp response. Let them argue. They'd have plenty more to argue about in the days to come. Kevin was waiting in the truck, anxiety written across his young face. "What happened, Dad?" "Your mother and I are going to have some discussions about the future. But I want you to know something, son. No matter what happens between the adults, you are the most important thing in my world. That will never change." As they drove home, Dale's phone buzzed with a text from Linda. "We need to talk. This doesn't have to get ugly." Dale deleted the message without responding. Linda was wrong about many things, but she was especially wrong about this. It was already ugly. It had been ugly the moment she chose to betray 15 years of marriage and poison his son's mind with lies. But what Linda didn't understand was that Dale Morrison had been dealing with ugly problems his entire life, and he'd never failed to find solution. Chapter 2: Blueprints for Destruction. Dale spent the next morning in his home office, a converted bedroom lined with filing cabinets and project boards. While Kevin slept in, Dale spread his financial records across the oak desk he'd built himself. Bank statements, canceled checks, money transfer receipts, 5 years of meticulous documentation. Every month, like clockwork, $3,000 had moved from his business account to Linda's personal account. He'd kept records because that's what responsible men did. But now these papers represented something more valuable than mere bookkeeping. They were ammunition. His lawyer, Greg Hoffman, arrived at 10 o'clock sharp. Greg was old school, a man who still wore suspenders and carried a leather briefcase that had seen 3 decades of legal battles. Dale had used him for business contracts and real estate deals, but today's conversation would be different. Dale, I have to say, I never saw this coming with Linda. Greg settled into the leather chair across from Dale's desk. She always seemed devoted to the family. That's what I thought too. Dale slid a folder across the desk. But appearances can be deceiving. Take a look at this. Greg whistled low as he reviewed the financial records. $180,000 over 5 years. Jesus, Dale. And she's been telling people you don't support them? Gets worse. Dale poured coffee from the thermal carafe he'd brought from the kitchen. She's been living with another man for 2 years while taking my money. Troy Brennan. You know him? The car detailing guy? Yeah, I know him. Flashy type, drives that red Corvette. Always seemed like more flash than substance. Greg looked up from the papers. Dale, with this documentation, we can file for divorce and make a strong case for fraud. You could probably get most of this money back. I don't want a divorce. Greg blinked. Come again. We're not legally separated. As far as the law is concerned, Linda and I are still married. She's been taking money from her husband while living with another man. That makes her adultery a matter of public record, doesn't it? Well, yes, but Dale. And Troy has been knowingly involved with a married woman while benefiting from her husband's financial support. Might be interesting to see how his clients feel about doing business with a man who has such flexible morals. Greg set down his coffee cup carefully. What exactly are you planning? Dale walked to the window overlooking his property. 5 acres of carefully maintained land, with a house positioned to catch the morning sun and shelter from winter winds. He designed every detail himself, thinking it would be his family's forever home. Greg, I need you to do some research for me. I want to know everything about Troy Brennan, his business, his finances, his reputation. I want to know who his clients are, where he gets his supplies, who holds his business loans. Dale, that sounds like you're planning something that could get you in trouble. I'm planning to protect my interests and my son's future. That's what fathers do. Dale turned back to his lawyer. I also need you to look into Linda's activities. Bank records, credit reports, anything that's public record. If she's been spending my money on luxuries while claiming poverty, I want documentation. Greg was quiet for a long moment. You know, there might be a simpler way to handle this. We could file for divorce, seek an injunction to stop the payments, and let the court sort out the financial issues. The court. Dale's voice carried a hint of disgust. The same court system that takes 2 years to resolve a custody dispute while children suffer. The same system that awards alimony to cheating spouses because they've become accustomed to a lifestyle. Dale, I understand you're angry. I'm not angry, Greg. Anger is a hot emotion, and hot emotions lead to poor decisions. I'm cold. I'm calculating, and I'm going to handle this my way. After Greg left, Dale drove to his main construction site, a luxury development where he was building 4 custom homes. The houses were in various stages of completion, and Dale found the familiar rhythm of construction work helped him think clearly. His foreman, Ray Castellanos, was a man who'd worked for Dale for 8 years. Ray understood that in construction, mistakes had consequences and second chances were rare. Boss, we got a problem with the electrical inspector. He's demanding changes to work that was already approved. Ray spat tobacco juice into a paper cup. Says the code changed and we need to rewire the entire second floor of House 3. When did the code change? Last week, but the permit was pulled 2 months ago under the old code. Dale nodded. Schedule a meeting with the inspector. Sometimes these things can be resolved with a conversation. But as Ray walked away, Dale's mind wasn't on electrical codes. He was thinking about Linda and Troy and how they'd built their relationship on a foundation of deception. In construction, a weak foundation inevitably led to collapse. The only question was timing. That afternoon, Dale drove to Troy's business, Brennan Automotive Detailing, located in a converted warehouse on the industrial side of town. The place was busy, with several high-end cars being worked on by a crew of young men in matching polo shirts. Dale parked across the street and observed for an hour. Troy's operation was impressive, professional, efficient, obviously profitable. The man had built something legitimate, which made Dale respect him slightly more than he would a simple grifter, but also made him more dangerous. Troy emerged from the building around 3 o'clock, keys to the Corvette in hand. Dale watched him drive away, then crossed the street and entered the building. "Help you?" A young man with Miguel embroidered on his shirt approached. "I'm interested in having my truck detailed. Heard good things about this place." "Absolutely. What kind of vehicle?" "Ford F-250. Work truck, gets pretty dirty." Miguel's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. "We mostly specialize in luxury vehicles, but we can handle pickup trucks. Might take a couple days to fit you in, though." Dale looked around the facility. Professional equipment, organized workspace, attention to detail. Troy had built this business with care, the same way Dale built houses. It would be a shame to see it destroyed. "Actually, let me think about it. I might go with someone else." Dale left without scheduling an appointment, but he'd learned what he needed to know. Troy's business was successful enough to support an expensive lifestyle, but it depended entirely on reputation and word-of-mouth referrals. The kind of business that could collapse quickly if the right pressure was applied. That evening, as Dale grilled burgers for himself and Kevin, his son brought up the elephant in the room. "Dad, are you and Mom getting divorced?" Dale flipped the burgers, considering his answer. "Kevin, your mother has made some choices that have changed our family. I can't control her choices, but I can control how I respond to them. She called today. She wants to see me next weekend." "What did you tell her?" "I said I'd think about it." Kevin poked at his hamburger bun. "I'm confused, Dad. I love Mom, but what she said about you, that wasn't right." "No, it wasn't. And that's something your mother is going to have to live with." Dale sat across from his son. "Kevin, I want you to understand something. In life, people will show you who they really are through their actions, not their words. Your mother showed you something about herself yesterday. That knowledge is valuable, even if it's painful. Are you going to forgive her?" The question hung in the air between them. Dale thought about his own father, who'd been crushed by tons of rock because a mining company had cut corners on safety. He thought about the promises he'd made to Linda on their wedding day, and the promises she'd made in return. "Son, forgiveness is something people earn through their actions, not something they're entitled to because of their words. Your mother has shown me who she really is. I'm going to respond accordingly." That night, after Kevin went to bed, Dale sat in his workshop and began sketching. Not house plans this time, but something far more complex. A blueprint for justice, carefully designed to bring down everything Troy and Linda had built on the foundation of their betrayal. The first phase would be information gathering. The second would be preparation. The third would be execution. Dale Morrison had built his reputation by finishing what he started. This project will be no different. Chapter 3. Surveying the Damage. Tuesday morning brought Linda to Dale's door, looking haggard and defensive. She wore designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that Dale recognized from shopping trips 6 months earlier. Another purchase funded by his monthly payments. "We need to talk." She brushed past him into the foyer without invitation. "Kevin's at school." Good timing. Dale closed the door, but didn't move away from it, keeping his body language clear. She wasn't welcome here. "Dale, I know you're hurt, but we can handle this like adults. I never meant for Kevin to get caught in the middle." "Then you shouldn't have poisoned him against me." Linda's composure slipped. "I was frustrated. Sometimes I say things when I'm emotional. You've been taking $3,000 a month from me while living with another man. That's not emotional, Linda. That's calculated fraud." "Fraud?" Her voice rose. "Dale, I'm still your wife. That money was for Kevin's expenses and my living costs. Just because I found someone who actually pays attention to me doesn't mean—" "Stop." Dale's voice cut through her justification like a saw blade. "Don't insult my intelligence. You've been playing house with Troy for 2 years while taking money meant for our son. That makes you a liar and a thief." Linda's face flushed with anger. "You think you're so perfect, don't you? Working all the time, building your little empire while your family falls apart. Troy actually talks to me, Dale. He makes me feel alive in ways you never did. Is that supposed to justify stealing from me? I didn't steal anything. That money was mine by right. 15 years of marriage, 15 years of being ignored while you built other people's houses. Other people's houses that paid for this house, your car, your clothes, and every luxury you've enjoyed for the past 15 years. Dale's voice remained level, but Linda could see the ice in his eyes. Let me make something clear. The monthly payment stopped today. You can't do that. Kevin needs. I'll provide for Kevin directly. You're cut off. Linda's mask finally slipped completely. Dale, please. I know I handled this wrong, but Troy and I are serious. We want to get married, start fresh. If you could just what? Finance your new life with another man. Dale opened the front door. This conversation is over. Dale, wait. There's something else. Linda's voice turned desperate. Troy's been having some problems with his business. If we could work out some kind of settlement. Dale paused, his hand on the doorknob. What kind of problems? Some of his equipment was damaged in a break-in last week. His insurance is being difficult about the claim. He's worried about meeting his obligations. The break-in was news to Dale, but he filed the information away. And you thought I might help him out? I thought maybe we could reach an understanding. I know you have connections in the business community. Linda, get out of my house. After she left, Dale sat in his kitchen and made notes. Troy's business was apparently more vulnerable than it appeared. Equipment problems, insurance issues, financial pressure. These were the kinds of weaknesses that could be exploited by someone who understood how small businesses operated. Dale's phone rang. Greg Hoffman calling with the research results. I've got some interesting information about your friend Troy Brennan. Greg's voice carried a hint of amusement. Want to know what I found? Tell me. Brennan's business is leveraged to the teeth. He took out a substantial loan 2 years ago to expand the operation, right around the time he started seeing Linda, coincidentally. The loan is secured by his equipment and property, and he's been making payments on time, but barely. What about the break-in Linda mentioned? That's where it gets interesting. According to the police report, the break-in targeted specific pieces of equipment, high-end polishing and detailing machines worth about $40,000. But here's the thing. Nothing else was touched. Cash register wasn't touched. Office equipment was ignored. Even some valuable tools were left behind. Dale processed this information. Sounds like someone who knew exactly what they were looking for, or someone who wanted to send a message. The insurance company is investigating possible fraud, which explains why they're being difficult about the claim. Anything else? Brennan's client list is interesting. A lot of wealthy individuals, some local politicians, a few people with questionable reputations. The kind of clientele that values discretion and reputation above everything else. After ending the call, Dale drove to the construction site where he had a standing Tuesday lunch with Ray Castellanos. They usually ate in Ray's trailer and discussed project schedules, but today Dale had different questions. Ray, you know anything about Troy Brennan's operation? Ray looked up from his sandwich. The car detailing guy? Yeah, I know him. Good business, but the man's got expensive tastes. Lies like he's making twice what he probably is. How do you know that? My nephew worked for him last summer. Said Brennan was always stressed about money, always looking for ways to cut costs without cutting quality. Tough balance in that business. Your nephew still work there? Nah, kid got tired of Brennan's attitude. Said the man was decent to customers, but treated his employees like they were replaceable. Ray took a drink of coffee. Why you asking? Just curious about a potential client. But Dale wasn't thinking about becoming a client. He was thinking about employees who might have grievances about the delicate balance between reputation and reality that kept businesses like Troy's afloat. That afternoon, Dale drove to Kevin's school to pick him up, something he'd started doing since Linda's revelation. The boy needed stability, and Dale intended to provide it. How was school? Okay. Mom texted me during lunch. She wants to see me this weekend. What did you tell her? I said I'd talk to you about it. Kevin looked out the window. Dad, do I have to see her if I don't want to? The question cut through Dale like a blade. Linda's betrayal had wounded him, but seeing its effect on Kevin made him realize the true scope of the damage. Son, she's still your mother, but I won't force you to do anything that makes you uncomfortable. I'm angry at her. Is that wrong? Dale pulled into their driveway and turned off the engine. Kevin, anger is a natural response to betrayal, but don't let it consume you. Use it as fuel to become a better man than the people who hurt you. Like you're doing? The boy was too perceptive for his own good. Something like that. That evening, while Kevin worked on homework, Dale sat in his workshop and continued planning. He'd identified Troy's vulnerabilities: financial pressure, reputation-dependent business model, employee dissatisfaction, and insurance problems. Linda's vulnerabilities were different but equally exploitable. Her dependence on Dale's money, her social standing, and her deep-seated need for approval and status. Dale had spent his career building structures designed to last generations. But he'd also learned that the key to any successful construction project was understanding the materials you were working with, their strengths, their weaknesses, and their breaking points. Linda and Troy had chosen to build their relationship on a foundation of deception and theft. Dale was simply going to test that foundation to see how much weight it could bear. By the time he finished his planning session, Dale had outlined a strategy that would systematically dismantle everything Linda and Troy had built together. It would take patience, precision, and a willingness to see the project through to completion. Dale Morrison had never left a job unfinished, and he wasn't about to start now. Chapter 4. Drawing the Plans. Dale's alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., same as every workday for the past 20 years. But this Wednesday morning was different. Instead of heading directly to the construction site, he drove to Murphy's Diner on the east side of town, a place where contractors, truckers, and shift workers grab coffee before dawn. At a corner booth, Dale met with Carlos Mendez, a private investigator he'd used occasionally for background checks on subcontractors. Carlos was former military police, thorough and discreet. "You sounded serious on the phone." Carlos stirred sugar into his black coffee. "What do you need?" Dale slid a folder across the Formica table. "Complete background on these two people. Financial records, daily routines, business relationships, personal habits. Everything." Carlos glanced at the photos of Linda and Troy. "Your wife and her boyfriend?" "My wife and the man who's been living off my money for 2 years." "Dale, I have to ask, what are you planning to do with this information?" "I'm going to destroy them." Carlos set down his coffee cup. "Look, I understand you're pissed. But if you're thinking about doing something that could land you in prison..." "Carlos, I've built my reputation by planning carefully and executing flawlessly. This is just another construction project. A demolition project. Demolition can be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing." Dale met his gaze steadily. "I know exactly what I'm doing." After breakfast, Dale drove to his main office, a converted house near downtown where he ran Morrison Construction. His secretary, Helen Vasquez, had worked for him for 10 years and managed his schedule with military precision. "Morning, Dale. You have the Henderson consultation at 10, lunch with the bank at noon, and the city planning meeting at 3. Cancel the planning meeting. Reschedule it for next week." Dale poured coffee from the machine Helen kept running all day. "I need you to pull some files for me." "Which ones?" "Every client we've worked for in the past 5 years. I want names, addresses, phone numbers. Also pull the vendor files, suppliers, subcontractors, anyone we do regular business with." Helen raised an eyebrow. "That's a lot of files." "What's this for?" "Market research." But Dale wasn't researching markets. He was building a network, identifying everyone in Millbrook County who knew his reputation for quality and integrity. These were people who trusted him, people who would listen when he had something important to say. At 10 a.m., Dale met with Martha Henderson, a widow who wanted to build a small retirement home on family land. The consultation went well. Dale had a knack for understanding what clients really wanted, even when they couldn't articulate it themselves. "Mr. Morrison, I've heard wonderful things about your work." Martha Henderson was 70-ish, sharp-eyed, and clearly well-connected in the community. "Eleanor Whitman says you built her daughter's house, and it's absolutely beautiful. Eleanor's a good client. We've done several projects for her family." "Yes, she mentioned that. She also said you're a man of integrity, which is rare these days. So many contractors promise one thing and deliver another." Dale nodded, filing away another useful connection. Eleanor Whitman was married to Judge Robert Whitman, one of the most respected jurists in the county. After the Henderson meeting, Dale drove to Brennan Automotive Detailing. He parked across the street again and observed the operation. Today, Troy's red Corvette wasn't in its usual spot, and the business seemed less busy than before. Dale's phone buzzed with a text from Carlos. "Preliminary report ready." Meet at 7 p.m., same place. The rest of the day passed in routine business activities, but Dale's mind was constantly working. Every conversation, every interaction was viewed through the lens of his larger project. He was mapping relationships, identifying pressure points, building the framework for Troy and Linda's destruction. At 7 p.m., Dale met Carlos at Murphy's Diner again. The evening crowd was different. Families finishing dinner, teenagers sharing sodas, a quieter atmosphere than a morning rush. I've got some interesting information. Carlos opened a manila folder. Want the financial picture first? Start there. Troy Brennan is in worse shape than he looks. The business loan I mentioned is just the beginning. He's got credit card debt approaching $50,000, a second mortgage on his house, and he's been late on several payments in the past 6 months. What about income? The detailing business is seasonal. Summer months are good, but winter revenue drops significantly. He's been using credit to smooth out the cash flow problems, which is why his debt keeps growing. Dale studied the financial summary. What about Linda? Your wife is living well beyond her means, even with the $3,000 a month from you. She's got credit cards maxed out. She's been borrowing against a life insurance policy, and she's been asking family members for loans. Family members? Her sister Carol loaned her $5,000 last month. Carol's husband isn't happy about it, apparently. This was useful information. Linda's extended family had always been neutral in their marriage, but if she was creating financial problems for them, that neutrality might shift. What about their daily routines? Carlos flipped pages. Linda worked part-time at a boutique downtown, Fashions by Francine. She's there Tuesday through Thursday, noon to 6. The rest of the time, she's either at Troy's place or shopping. And Troy, predictable schedule. At the shop by 7 most days, leaves around 5 unless he's working late. Friday nights, he plays poker with a group of guys at Murphy's bar on 4th Street. Saturday mornings, he plays golf at the country club. Dale memorized the patterns. Predictability was weakness in any defensive system. Carlos, I need you to dig deeper on Troy's business relationships. I want to know who his major clients are, who his suppliers are, what his insurance situation looks like. Dale, this is starting to feel like corporate espionage. It's research. I need to understand the full picture before I make my moves. Carlos closed the folder. What kind of moves are you planning? Dale left money on the table for both meals. The kind that will teach them that actions have consequences. Thursday morning, Dale implemented the first phase of his plan. He called Eleanor Whitman, the client who'd recommended him to Martha Henderson. Eleanor, this is Dale Morrison. I have a favor to ask. Of course, Dale. What can I do for you? I'm dealing with a personal situation that might affect my reputation in the community. I'd like to explain the circumstances to you and your husband, if you have time. Eleanor's voice sharpened with interest. Is everything all right? I prefer to discuss it in person. Would you and Judge Whitman be available for coffee sometime this week? Actually, we're free this evening. Why don't you come by the house around 7? The Whitman home was a restored Victorian that Dale had helped renovate 5 years earlier. Judge Robert Whitman was a man who commanded respect without demanding it. Quiet authority built on decades of fair dealing. Dale, Eleanor says you have some concerns about your reputation. The judge poured brandy from a crystal decanter. What's troubling you? Dale had rehearsed this conversation, but he delivered it with apparent reluctance. Judge, I'm going through some personal difficulties that might become public. I wanted you to hear my side before rumors start circulating. He explained the financial situation with Linda, the discovery of her relationship with Troy, and her attempts to paint him as an absent father. He showed them copies of his financial records, demonstrating the monthly payments he'd been making. My God, Dale. Eleanor's face flushed with indignation. She's been telling people you don't support your family? I'm afraid so, and I'm concerned that these false accusations might affect my business relationships. Judge Whitman studied the financial documents with a lawyer's eye. This is clearly documented fraud, Dale. Have you consulted with an attorney? I'm working with Greg Hoffman on the legal aspects. But Judge, I built my reputation on honesty and integrity. If Linda continues spreading these lies, it could destroy everything I've worked for. What can we do to help? Dale had been hoping for exactly that question. I'd appreciate it if you could share the truth with anyone who might have heard Linda's version of events. I'm not looking for sympathy, just fairness. By the time Dale left the Whitman house, he'd gained two powerful allies in the community's social structure. The judge and his wife would spread Dale's version of events through their extensive network, effectively inoculating the community against Linda's lies. Phase 1 was complete. Now it was time to begin pressuring Troy's business foundation. Friday morning, Dale drove to the industrial district and parked outside Brennan Automotive Detailing. He waited until Troy left for his regular Friday golf game, then approached Miguel, the young employee he'd spoken with earlier. Miguel, right? I was here earlier this week asking about detailing my truck. Oh yeah, I remember. You decide what you want to do. Actually, I wanted to ask you about working conditions here. I'm thinking about referring some of my construction crew for car detailing, but I like to know the businesses I recommend treat their employees fairly. Miguel glanced around nervously. Why are you asking? I've been in business for 20 years. I've learned that companies that treat employees well do better work. Companies that don't, well, you get what you pay for. Miguel's expression shifted. Look, man, I need this job. But Troy's been getting weird lately. Paranoid, you know? Blaming us for stuff that goes wrong, cutting our hours, talking about layoffs. That doesn't sound good. It ain't. Plus, he had us working last weekend to clean up after that break-in, but he wouldn't pay overtime. Said we should be grateful to have jobs. Dale filed away this information. Disgruntled employees were valuable assets in any demolition project. Miguel, if you ever need work, give me a call. Dale handed him a business card. Morrison Construction. I pay fair wages and treat people with respect. That evening, Dale reviewed his progress. He'd begun building community support, identified weaknesses in Troy's operation, and started recruiting potential assets. The foundation was being prepared for demolition. Monday morning would begin Phase 2, applying pressure to the structural weak points he'd identified. Dale Morrison had never built anything that wasn't designed to last, but he'd also never encountered a demolition project he couldn't complete on schedule and under budget. Chapter 5, Foundation Cracks. Monday morning arrived with the crisp promise of October in the mountains. Dale started the day with a phone call to Jim Bradley, who owned Bradley Insurance, the company that covered most of the contractors and small businesses in Millbrook County. Jim, it's Dale Morrison. I need some information about business insurance policies. Sure, Dale. You looking to increase your coverage? Actually, I'm researching a potential client who's had some equipment stolen. Troy Brennan at Brennan Automotive Detailing. You know anything about his situation? Jim's voice became cautious. Dale, I can't discuss specific clients. Of course not. I'm just wondering about the general process for equipment theft claims. My own policy might need updating. Well, generally speaking, equipment theft claims require police reports, proof of ownership, and detailed inventories. We've had some cases lately where the documentation was questionable. Dale understood the subtext. Thanks, Jim. I'll give you a call about updating my policies soon. Next, Dale contacted Mike Rodriguez, who owned Rodriguez Equipment Rental, the company that supplied specialized tools to most area businesses. Mike, I'm thinking about expanding into vehicle restoration. You rent detailing equipment. Some basic stuff, yeah? But if you want professional-grade equipment, you're looking at purchasing. That stuff's expensive. What about used equipment? Anyone selling lately? Funny you ask. Had a guy come in last week looking to rent equipment that he said was similar to stuff he'd lost in a break-in. Brennan, I think his name was. But when I showed him rental rates, he couldn't afford it. Dale thanked Mike and hung up. Troy's financial pressure was increasing, which meant he'd be more vulnerable to additional stress. At noon, Dale drove to Fashions by Francine, the boutique where Linda worked part-time. He didn't go inside. Instead, he positioned himself at a coffee shop across the street with a clear view of the entrance. Linda arrived at 11:45, 15 minutes early. She looked stressed, checking her phone constantly and smoking cigarettes between customers. At 2 p.m., she stepped outside and made a phone call that became increasingly animated, arms gesturing, face flushed with apparent anger. Dale's own phone buzzed with a text from Carlos. More info on Troy's poker game. Regular players include 3 guys with gambling debts to some questionable people. Game might not be as friendly as it looks. This was unexpected, but useful information. If Troy was involved with people who had connections to serious money problems, that added another layer of vulnerability. That afternoon, Dale implemented the next phase of his plan. He called 6 of Troy's biggest clients, wealthy individuals who valued their cars and their reputations equally. Mrs. Patterson, this is Dale Morrison from Morrison Construction. I built your pool house last year. Of course, Dale. What can I do for you? I'm calling as a concerned member of the business community. Have you heard about the break-in at Brennan Automotive Detailing? No, I hadn't. How awful. Was anyone hurt? No injuries, but they lost a lot of expensive equipment. I'm worried about Troy's ability to maintain his service standards while he's dealing with these problems. Dale didn't make any direct accusations. He simply planted seeds of doubt. Professional car detailing required trust. Clients left expensive vehicles in Troy's care, often for days at a time. Any questions about reliability or financial stability could be devastating. By the end of the week, 3 of Troy's major clients had called to reschedule appointments or ask questions about his insurance coverage. Word was spreading through the small community of luxury car owners, and rumors had a way of growing in the telling. Friday evening, Dale received another report from Carlos. Troy's been asking around about selling some of his remaining equipment. He's also been trying to get a line of credit increase, but his bank turned him down. What about Linda? She's been fighting with her sister Carol about the loan. Apparently, Carol wants the money back, but Linda doesn't have it. Carol's threatening to tell their parents about Linda's relationship with Troy. Dale smiled grimly. Linda's support network was beginning to fracture under financial pressure, exactly as he predicted. Saturday morning, Dale took Kevin to breakfast at Murphy's Diner. The boy had been quiet all week, processing the changes in his family situation. Dad, kids at school are asking me about Mom and you. What should I tell them? Tell them the truth as you understand it. Your parents are having problems, and right now you're living with me. Some kids said their parents heard Mom was dating someone. Dale set down his coffee cup. Kevin, I can't stop people from talking, but I can promise you that whatever happens between your mother and me, you'll always be my priority. Will you and Mom get back together? The question Dale had been dreading. Son, your mother made choices that broke our family. Some things can't be fixed, only replaced. Kevin nodded slowly. At 14, he was old enough to understand that some damage was permanent. That afternoon, while Kevin was at a friend's house, Dale drove to Murphy's Bar on 4th Street. Friday night poker was a weekly tradition for several groups of men in town, and Dale wanted to observe Troy's game. The bar was typical small-town working class. Dim lighting, scarred wooden tables, the smell of beer and cigarettes. Dale ordered a beer and positioned himself where he could watch the poker room in the back. Troy arrived at 8 p.m. with 3 other men Dale recognized from around town. One was Rick Paulson, who owned a struggling auto repair shop. Another was Danny Kovac, who'd lost his construction business to bankruptcy 2 years earlier. The third was a stranger, younger, well-dressed, with the kind of alert eyes that suggested he wasn't there just for friendly gambling. Dale nursed his beer and watched the dynamics. Troy was clearly trying to project confidence, but his betting patterns suggested a man under pressure. He was playing recklessly, chasing losses with bigger bets. Around 10 p.m., the well-dressed stranger leaned across the table and said something that made Troy's face go pale. Money changed hands, more than Dale would have expected in a friendly game. Dale finished his beer and left, but not before noting the license plate of the stranger's black BMW. Carlos would be able to trace it. Sunday morning brought Linda to Dale's door again, this time without the designer clothes and careful makeup. She looked haggard, desperate. Dale, I need to talk to you. Kevin's at church with the Rodriguez family. You have 5 minutes. I'm in trouble. Real trouble. Linda's voice was shaky. Troy owes money to some people, and they're pressuring him. He's talking about leaving town, starting over somewhere else. And you're telling me this why? Because he wants me to come with him. He says we can't get married until he sorts out his financial problems, but he needs money to make a fresh start. Dale almost laughed. Let me guess. You want me to help him? Dale, please. I know I've made mistakes, but if something happens to Troy, I don't know what I'll do. I've burned bridges with my family. I can't afford the apartment on my own. Linda, stop. You made your choices. Live with the consequences. What about Kevin? If I have to move away, Kevin stays with me. He's already made that clear. Linda's desperation turned to anger. You can't keep my son from me. I'm not keeping him from you. He's choosing not to see you because you lied to him and tried to turn him against me. That's on you, not me. After Linda left, Dale sat in his workshop and reviewed his progress. Phase 1 had established community support. Phase 2 had applied financial and social pressure. Now it was time for Phase 3, direct confrontation. Dale Morrison had spent his career building structures that could withstand any storm. But he'd also learned that even the strongest buildings could be brought down if you knew where to apply pressure to the critical support points. Troy and Linda were about to discover just how much pressure their relationship could withstand. Chapter 6, Load-Bearing Walls. Tuesday morning brought the first real test of Dale's strategy. Carlos called with information about the well-dressed poker player, Marcus Webb, a business consultant with connections to several high-interest lending operations across 3 states. This guy's not exactly a loan shark, but he's not a bank either, Carlos explained. He provides short-term financing to people who can't get conventional loans. Interest rates that would make a credit card company blush. How much does Troy owe him? From what I could piece together, around $20,000. But with Webb's interest rates, that number grows fast. Dale processed this information while reviewing his construction schedules. Today he was visiting the Patterson estate to discuss a new garage project. One of the clients he'd contacted about Troy's reliability issues. Mrs. Patterson was waiting in her garden, still elegant at 70, despite her obvious concern. Dale, I'm so glad you called about that detailing business. I had my Bentley there last week, and something didn't feel right. What kind of concerns? The young man working on my car seemed nervous, kept checking his phone, and Mr. Brennan himself looked, well, frankly, he looked desperate. When someone's handling a $100,000 automobile, you want them focused. I understand completely. Have you found an alternative? Actually, yes. Eleanor Whitman recommended a service in Charleston. They sent someone here, which is much more convenient. Another client lost to Troy's crumbling reputation. Dale filed this success away and moved to the next phase of his plan. That afternoon, Dale drove to Brennan Automotive Detailing during the lunch hour. Most of the employees were away, and Troy was in his office, a glass-walled space overlooking the work floor. Dale knocked on the office door. Troy, you got a minute? Troy looked up from his paperwork, and Dale could see the stress lines around his eyes. Dale, this is unexpected. I think we need to talk. Troy gestured to a chair, but Dale remained standing. Look, about Linda and me. I'm not here about Linda. I'm here about your business. My business. Dale pulled out a folder and set it on Troy's desk. Word is getting around that you're having financial problems. Equipment stolen, insurance complications, clients starting to ask questions. Troy's face flushed. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. Mrs. Patterson called me yesterday. She's concerned about leaving her Bentley with someone who might not be able to complete the work. Rich people talk to each other, Troy. Bad news travels fast in a small community. Are you trying to sabotage my business? Dale sat down now, leaning back in the chair with casual confidence. Troy, I built half the houses in this county. I employ 47 people directly and probably support another 100 jobs indirectly. When I have concerns about someone in the business community, people listen. What do you want? I want Linda back. Troy blinked in surprise. Back? But you said. I said a lot of things when I was angry. But she's still my wife, and Kevin needs his mother. Dale's voice carried none of the emotion his words suggested. The question is whether you're going to make this easy or difficult. Linda loves me. She's not going back to you. Troy, let me explain something about women like Linda. She didn't leave me for love. She left for the idea of a better life. Right now, your life isn't looking so good. How long do you think her affection will last when Marcus Webb comes calling for his money? Troy's face went white. How do you know about Marcus? Small town. People talk. Dale leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell Linda that you've reconsidered, that you think she should work things out with her husband for Kevin's sake. You're going to step aside gracefully. And if I don't, Dale opened the folder on Troy's desk. Inside were photographs of Troy's poker game, documentation of his debts, and a list of his remaining major clients. If you don't, your business will be destroyed within a month. Your remaining clients will find reasons to take their cars elsewhere. Your suppliers will start demanding cash payments. Your insurance company will find reasons to deny claims. You can't do that. Troy, I've been in business for 20 years. I know every insurance agent, every bank officer, every wealthy car owner in this county. One word from me, and you'll be finished. Troy stared at the photographs, his hands shaking slightly. This is blackmail. This is business. You took something that belonged to me. I'm taking it back. Linda doesn't belong to you. She's not property. Dale's smile was cold. Linda made her choice when she decided to live off my money while playing house with you. She chose security over passion. Now she needs to choose again. That evening, Dale waited. Linda would receive Troy's call, and she would have to decide whether her love for him was strong enough to survive poverty and uncertainty. At 9 p.m., his phone rang. Dale, it's Linda. Troy says you two talked today. We did. He says he thinks I should work things out with you. For Kevin's sake. Her voice was confused, hurt. Did you threaten him? I explained reality to him. The same reality I'm going to explain to you. What reality? The reality that your boyfriend owes $20,000 to a man who breaks kneecaps when people don't pay their debts. The reality that his business is failing and his income is about to disappear. The reality that you can't afford your lifestyle without my money. Silence on the line. Linda, you have a choice. Come home, be a mother to Kevin, and we'll work on rebuilding our marriage. Or stay with Troy and discover what poverty actually feels like. You're giving me an ultimatum? I'm giving you facts. Choose accordingly. Dale hung up and sat in his workshop, surrounded by the tools that had built his fortune and his reputation. Tomorrow, Linda would make her decision. But Dale already knew what that decision would be. Women like Linda always chose security when passion came with a price tag they couldn't afford. By Thursday, Linda was back in Dale's house. Her belongings moved from the downtown apartment. She maintained that she was only staying temporarily for Kevin's sake, but Dale knew better. Troy's business lost 3 more major clients that week. Miguel and 2 other employees quit to work for competitors. The insurance company officially denied his equipment claim, citing irregularities in his documentation. Friday night, Troy didn't show up for the poker game. By Sunday, his shop was closed and a for lease sign appeared in the window. Dale had achieved his objective with surgical precision. The relationship built on his money had collapsed the moment that financial support was threatened. Linda was back home, Troy was destroyed, and Kevin was safe. But Dale Morrison was not a forgiving man. This was not reconciliation. This was the beginning of a much longer and more comprehensive punishment. Linda and Troy had thought they could take advantage of Dale's patience and generosity. Now, they would learn what happened when a man who built his life on carefully planned foundations decided to tear something down. The foundation was destroyed. Now it was time to excavate the rubble and salt the earth so nothing could ever grow there again. Chapter 7. The weight comes down. Linda had been back in the house for a week, sleeping in the guest room and walking on eggshells around Dale. She tried to resume normal routines, cooking dinner, helping Kevin with homework, making small talk about neighborhood gossip, but the underlying tension was palpable. Kevin seemed relieved to have his mother back, but Dale noticed the boy watching both parents carefully, as if expecting another explosion. The family dinners were exercises in polite conversation over unspoken hostility. On Thursday evening, as Linda cleared dishes from another silent meal, she finally broke. Dale, we need to talk about where this is going. Dale looked up from his newspaper. I thought we were clear. You're here. Kevin's here. We're working on our marriage. Working on our marriage? Dale, you haven't said 10 words to me that weren't about Kevin or household logistics. You act like I'm a live-in housekeeper. What did you expect, Linda? That I pretend the last 2 years didn't happen. Kevin looked between his parents, tension radiating from his thin shoulders. I'm going to do homework, he said quietly, escaping upstairs. Once they were alone, Linda's carefully maintained composure cracked. I know I made mistakes, Dale, but if you want this marriage to work, you have to meet me halfway. Meet you halfway? Dale folded his newspaper with deliberate precision. Linda, you spent 2 years lying to me, stealing from me, and poisoning our son against me. You want me to meet you halfway. I never meant for Kevin to get hurt, but he did get hurt, and that's on you. Dale's voice remained calm, but Linda could see the ice in his eyes. You want to know where this is going? You're going to be the perfect wife and mother. You're going to rebuild Kevin's trust. You're going to convince this community that our marriage is solid. And what about what I want? What you want stopped matching the day you decided to betray 15 years of marriage for a man who couldn't even afford to support you properly. Linda's face flushed with anger. So, this is punishment? You're keeping me here as some kind of prisoner. You're free to leave any time you want. But if you do, you leave with nothing. No money, no support, no access to Kevin until he turns 18 and chooses for himself. Dale, that's not fair. Fair. Dale stood up, his full height making the kitchen seem smaller. Let me tell you about fair, Linda. Fair would be divorcing you and demanding repayment of every dollar you stole. Fair would be making sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of woman you are. Fair would be ensuring you never see Kevin again. Linda backed against the kitchen counter, suddenly aware of how physically imposing her husband could be when he chose. Instead, I'm giving you a chance to earn back what you threw away. But understand something clearly. This is my house, my rules, my terms. You don't get to negotiate. That Friday, Dale received a call from Carlos with an update on Troy's situation. He's gone. Packed up and left town Wednesday night. Left behind about $15,000 in unpaid bills and a lease he can't break. Where did he go? My sources say Florida. Probably trying to get far enough away from Marcus Webb to avoid immediate consequences. Dale filed this information away. Troy's departure solved one problem, but created another. Linda would be mourning her lost love, which could make her unpredictable. That evening, Linda confirmed Dale's assessment. She sat at the kitchen table staring at her phone, tears streaming down her face. He's gone, she said without looking up. Troy left town. Didn't even say goodbye. Dale felt no sympathy, only satisfaction. I'm not surprised. Men like Troy run when things get difficult. You drove him away. I gave him a choice. He chose to run rather than fight for what he claimed to love. Dale poured himself coffee, his movements deliberate and unhurried. Says something about his character, doesn't it? Linda looked up, her eyes red with tears and fury. You destroyed him. You destroyed his business, his life. I exposed his weaknesses. His business was built on credit and reputation. When both disappeared, so did he. And you're proud of that. Dale sat across from her, his expression unchanged. Linda, Troy made the choice to get involved with a married woman. He made the choice to live off another man's money. He made the choice to build his life on a foundation of lies. I simply tested that foundation. What about me? What about what I've lost? What you've lost? Dale's voice remained quiet, but Linda could hear the steel underneath. You lost a man who abandoned you the moment staying became inconvenient. You lost the fantasy that someone would love you enough to sacrifice for you. You lost the illusion that your actions don't have consequences. Linda wiped her eyes, but the tears kept coming. Dale, I know I hurt you, but can't you find it in your heart to forgive me? For Kevin's sake, if not for mine. Dale studied his wife's tear-stained face, remembering the woman he'd married 15 years ago. She'd been beautiful then, full of dreams and apparent devotion. But that woman had revealed herself to be an illusion, a performance designed to secure financial stability. Linda, forgiveness is earned through actions, not words. You have years of rebuilding to do before we even discuss forgiveness. Years. You stole 2 years of my life and nearly destroyed my relationship with my son. You think a few tears and apologies erase that? Linda stared at him, beginning to understand the depth of his resolve. Dale, if you can't forgive me, why are you keeping me here? Because Kevin needs a mother, and because I want everyone in this community to see that Dale Morrison is a man who honors his commitments, even when others don't honor theirs. Your presence here serves my purposes. The brutal honesty of his words hit Linda like a physical blow. So I'm just useful to you? Right now, that's all you are. Whether you become anything more depends entirely on your actions going forward. Saturday morning brought an unexpected development. Dale was working in his shop when Kevin appeared in the doorway, looking troubled. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Are you and Mom going to be okay?" Dale set down his tools and gave his son his full attention. "What makes you ask?" "She's been crying a lot. And you too. You're polite to each other, but it doesn't feel real." Kevin was too perceptive for his own good. Dale had hoped to shield him from the worst of the adult complications, but the boy was old enough to sense the undercurrents. "Son, your mother broke trust with our family. Trust takes time to rebuild, if it can be rebuilt at all. Do you still love her?" The question cut to the heart of everything Dale had been avoiding. "I love the woman I thought she was. I'm not sure that woman ever really existed." Kevin nodded slowly. "What happens if you can't rebuild the trust? Then we'll find a way to be good parents to you without being married to each other. But either way, you'll be taken care of." "Dad, can I tell you something without you getting mad?" "Always. I'm angry at Mom for lying about you, but I still love her, and I feel guilty about that." Dale pulled his son close, feeling the boy's confusion and pain. "Kevin, you never have to feel guilty about loving your mother. She made bad choices, but she's still your mother. The adults will figure out their problems. Your job is to be a kid." That afternoon, while Linda was at the grocery store, Dale called Greg Hoffman. "Greg, I need you to draw up some papers." "What kind of papers?" "A post-nuptial agreement. Very specific terms about what happens if Linda decides to leave again." "Dale, that's unusual. Most people do prenups before marriage, not 15 years after. Most people don't have to deal with a spouse who's already proven their willingness to steal." Dale's voice was matter-of-fact. "I want everything documented. Her financial obligations, her parental responsibilities, the consequences of future infidelity." "This sounds like you're preparing for war." "I'm preparing for reality. If Linda wants to stay married, she'll sign. If she doesn't, we'll know where we stand." By Sunday evening, Dale had the draft agreement. 27 pages of legal language that essentially made Linda a conditional partner in her own marriage. She would have limited access to marital assets, no ability to take on debt without Dale's approval, and severe financial penalties for any future infidelity. When he presented it to her Sunday night, Linda read the first few pages before setting it aside. "I can't sign this. This isn't a marriage contract. It's indentured servitude. It's accountability. Something you've avoided for 2 years. Dale, if you hate me this much, why don't you just divorce me?" Dale looked at his wife, really looked at her, for the first time since she'd come back. She was still beautiful at 38, but the stress of recent weeks had added lines around her eyes and tension to her mouth. She looked fragile, vulnerable, almost like the young woman he'd married. For a moment, Dale felt something that might have been the ghost of old affection. Then he remembered Kevin's tears on Father's Day, and the feeling passed. "I don't hate you, Linda. Hate requires caring about someone. Right now, you're simply a problem I'm managing." The words hit her like a slap. "Jesus, Dale, what happened to you?" "You happened to me. Troy happened to me. 2 years of lies and betrayal happened to me." Dale's voice remained calm, which somehow made his words more devastating. "You taught me that the woman I loved was fiction. Now you get to live with the man that lesson created." Linda stared at the contract, then at her husband, finally understanding that this wasn't about reconciliation or forgiveness. This was about control, consequence, and a form of justice that had nothing to do with mercy. Dale Morrison had built his reputation on keeping his word and finishing what he started. Linda was about to discover what it meant to be on the receiving end of that relentless competence. The foundation had been destroyed, the rubble cleared away. Now Dale was ready to build something new on ground that would never again support the illusions Linda had once called love. Chapter 8. Final Inspection. Monday morning brought the phone call Dale had been expecting. Linda's sister, Carol, her voice tight with worry and barely controlled anger. "Dale, I need to know what's going on with Linda. She called me yesterday, crying, talking about signing some kind of contract to stay married to you." Dale set down his coffee and moved to his home office, closing the door to ensure privacy. "Carol, Linda, and I are working through our marital problems." That's between us. This isn't just between you two when she's talking about feeling trapped. Dale, I've known you for 15 years. You're not a cruel man. What's this really about? Dale had always liked Carol. She was 5 years older than Linda, more grounded, with a husband who worked construction and 3 kids she raised with practical wisdom. Carol had never bought into Linda's drama or her sense of entitlement. Carol, did Linda tell you about the $180,000? Silence on the line. Did she mention that she's been taking $3,000 a month from me for 5 years while living with another man? She said you two were separated. We were never legally separated. Never even discussed it formally. Linda just decided she wanted space, and I was fool enough to keep supporting her financially. Dale could hear Carol processing this information. My God, Linda told me you weren't giving her enough money for Kevin. Linda's been lying to everyone, Carol, including you, apparently. The loan she asked for was probably to help support her boyfriend's failing business. Carol was quiet for a long moment. Dale, I'm sorry. I had no idea. I'm not looking for apologies, Carol, but I need you to understand that Linda put herself in this situation. I'm offering her a way to rebuild our marriage and our family, but it requires accountability. This contract she mentioned ensures that if she chooses to betray our marriage again, there are consequences. Real consequences. Carol sighed. Dale, I'm not going to interfere in your marriage, but Linda's my sister. If you're just keeping her around to punish her, that's not healthy for anyone. What would you do, Carol, if you discovered that Mark had been living with another woman for 2 years while you supported him financially? The question hung in the air. Carol's husband Mark was a good man, steady, loyal, devoted to his family. The idea of him betraying that trust was almost unthinkable. I'd probably kill him, Carol admitted quietly. I'm giving Linda a chance to earn back what she threw away. That's more generous than she deserves. After ending the call with Carol, Dale drove to his main construction site. Physical work helped him think clearly, and he had decisions to make about the next phase of his plan. The luxury home development was progressing on schedule. 4 houses in various stages of completion, each representing months of careful planning and execution. Dale walked through house number 3, inspecting the electrical work that had been completed since his last visit. His phone buzzed with a text from Carlos. Troy surfaced in Tampa, working at a car wash for minimum wage. Marcus Webb's people caught up with him last week. Dale deleted the message without responding. Troy's fate was no longer his concern. That afternoon, Dale met with Judge Whitman at the courthouse. The judge had requested the meeting, ostensibly to discuss a charity fundraiser, but actually to check on Dale's personal situation. Dale, Eleanor's been worried about you since our conversation last month. How are things progressing with Linda? They were seated in the judge's chambers, a book-lined office that spoke of 3 decades of careful jurisprudence. Judge Whitman was a man who understood the difference between legal justice and personal justice. She's home. We're working on rebuilding our marriage. And how's Kevin handling everything? Better than expected. He's a resilient kid. Judge Whitman studied Dale's face with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent years evaluating truth and deception. Dale, I'm going to speak plainly. What you've accomplished with your wife's situation has been impressive from a tactical standpoint. But tactics and strategy are different things. Meaning you've solved the immediate problem, but have you thought about the long-term consequences? For Kevin especially, Dale had been expecting this conversation. Judge Whitman was known for his wisdom, and wise men asked difficult questions. Judge, Kevin needed to see that actions have consequences. That betrayal isn't something you just forgive and forget. I agree. But he also needs to see that redemption is possible, that people can change and relationships can heal. Can they? When someone shows you who they really are, should you pretend they're someone else? Judge Whitman leaned back in his chair. Dale, I've presided over hundreds of divorce cases. I've seen marriages destroyed by infidelity, financial betrayal, and simple incompatibility. But I've also seen couples rebuild after devastating breaches of trust. What's the difference? The difference is whether both people are committed to becoming better than they were, or whether one person is just trying to punish the other. Dale considered this. Judge, Linda had 2 years to show remorse, to make amends, to demonstrate that she understood the impact of her choices. Instead, she continued lying and manipulating until she had no other options. And now she's learning what consequences feel like. Judge Whitman nodded slowly. I understand your position, Dale, but remember that Kevin is watching everything. What kind of man do you want him to become? That evening, Dale sat in his workshop and thought about the judge's words. On the workbench in front of him was a jewelry box he'd been making for Kevin's girlfriend. A simple project that helped his hands stay busy while his mind worked through complex problems. Kevin appeared in the doorway, as if summoned by Dale's thoughts. Dad, can I ask you something personal? Shoot. Do you think Mom really loves Troy? Or was she just trying to escape from being married to you? The question was more sophisticated than Dale had expected from his 14-year-old son. What makes you ask that? She's been different since he left. Not just sad, but relieved, maybe? Like she doesn't have to pretend anymore. Dale set down his sandpaper and gave Kevin his full attention. What do you mean? When she was with Troy, she acted like this different person. More dramatic, more? I don't know, like she was playing a role. Since she's been back, she's more like the mom I remember from when I was little. This was an observation that cut to the heart of everything Dale had been trying to understand about Linda's behavior. Had her relationship with Troy been about love, or had it been about playing out some fantasy of who she thought she wanted to be? Kevin, people sometimes make choices based on who they think they want to be rather than who they actually are. Is that what Mom did? Maybe. The question is whether she's learned anything from the experience. That night, Dale found Linda in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a cup of tea and the postnuptial agreement. She'd been reading it carefully, making notes in the margins. I have questions about some of these clauses, she said without looking up. Dale poured himself coffee and sat across from her. Such as, this section about financial oversight. You want approval rights over any purchase over $500. Given your track record with money management, yes. Linda's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. And this clause about social media and public statements? I don't want our private business discussed online or with reporters. There won't be reporters, Dale. Won't there? Small-town marriage reconciliation after public infidelity? You'd be surprised what passes for news these days. Linda turned the page. This section about Kevin. What about it? It gives you final say over all major decisions regarding his upbringing, education, and activities. You forfeited equal parental authority when you tried to turn him against me. Linda set down the document and looked directly at Dale for the first time in days. If I sign this, am I your wife or your employee? You're whatever you choose to be within the boundaries this agreement establishes. And if I don't sign, then we get divorced, you leave with nothing, and Kevin chooses which parent he wants to live with. Linda nodded, as if she'd expected this answer. Dale, can I ask you something honestly? Go ahead. Is there any path back to the marriage we had before? Any way to earn your trust and respect again? Dale studied his wife's face, looking for signs of manipulation or calculation. What he saw instead was exhaustion, regret, and something that might have been genuine remorse. Linda, the marriage we had before was built on illusions. I thought you were someone you're not, and you thought you wanted a life you actually couldn't stand. Maybe that marriage needed to die. Then what are we building now? Dale finished his coffee before answering. Something more honest. Something based on reality instead of fantasy. Something that acknowledges that trust, once broken, has to be rebuilt from the ground up. Linda picked up the pen she'd been using to make notes. If I sign this, and if I do everything it requires, is there a chance you could love me again? The question hung between them like morning mist, fragile and uncertain. Linda, I can't promise to love someone who betrayed me, but I can promise to respect someone who proves they've learned from their mistakes. Linda stared at the signature line for a long moment, then signed her name with careful precision. Dale Morrison had built his reputation on keeping his word and finishing what he started. The foundation had been destroyed, the rubble cleared, and something new was taking shape. Whether that something would grow into love or merely mutual respect remained to be seen. But for the first time in years, Dale and Linda were building on solid ground. Chapter 9, The Final Blueprint. 6 months later, Dale stood in his workshop early Saturday morning, reviewing the architectural plans for Kevin's treehouse. His son had requested something more sophisticated than the simple platform Dale had built for him years earlier, a proper structure with walls, windows, and electrical service. The project had become a family effort. Linda had researched designs and helped Kevin sketch his ideas. She'd also insisted on safety features that Dale privately thought were unnecessary but publicly supported. It was the first thing they'd worked on together since her return, and Dale was cautiously optimistic about the collaboration. Kevin appeared in the doorway, still in pajamas, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Mom says breakfast is ready in 10 minutes. Thanks." Dale accepted the coffee, noting that Kevin had prepared it exactly the way he liked: black, strong, no sugar. Small attentions that spoke to the restoration of family rhythms. "Dad, can I ask you something about the treehouse?" "Shoot. Would it be okay if I invited Mom to help with the actual building? She says she wants to learn how to use tools properly." Dale considered this request. Linda had been making an effort for months, following the terms of their agreement, rebuilding her relationship with Kevin, participating in family activities without drama or manipulation. She'd also gotten a full-time job at the boutique and had started paying back the money she'd borrowed from her sister. If she's serious about learning, she's welcome to help. She is serious. Yesterday, she was reading one of your construction books and asking me to explain things. This was news to Dale. Linda had never shown interest in his work during their marriage, treating it as something that paid the bills but didn't deserve her attention. "Which book?" "The one about framing techniques." She said she wanted to understand what you actually do all day. After breakfast, Dale, Linda, and Kevin drove to the building supply store to select materials for the treehouse. Linda asked thoughtful questions about wood grades, hardware options, and structural requirements. She wasn't pretending expertise she didn't have, but she was genuinely trying to understand. "Dale, why do you use galvanized bolts instead of regular ones for outdoor projects?" she asked while they loaded lumber into the truck. "Regular bolts will rust and weaken over time. Galvanized coating protects against moisture. And that's worth the extra cost? Depends on whether you want a structure to last 5 years or 50 years. Linda nodded, making a note in the small notebook she'd started carrying. "I'm beginning to understand why people trust you with their projects. You think long-term." As they drove home, Kevin fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from helping load materials. Linda watched the countryside pass by, then spoke quietly. "Dale, I've been thinking about something Judge Whitman said at the church fundraiser last week." "What's that?" "He said that the strongest structures are built on foundations that have been tested and proven stable." I think he was talking about more than construction. Dale glanced at his wife. "What do you think he meant?" "I think he meant that our marriage couldn't be strong until we knew what it could survive. The foundation we had before was untested. We never faced real problems together. And now we know what we can survive and what we can't." Linda turned to look at Dale. "I know I broke something that may never be completely repaired, but I also learned who I am when everything falls apart." "Who are you?" Linda was quiet for a moment. "Someone who makes terrible choices when she's afraid. Someone who runs toward fantasy when reality gets difficult. Someone who needs to prove she's worthy of second chances." They were pulling into the driveway now. Kevin was still asleep, and Dale made no move to wake him. "Linda, can I ask you something honestly?" "Of course." "Do you miss Troy?" Linda considered the question carefully. "I miss the feeling of being someone different. Troy made me feel glamorous, exciting, like I was the star of my own romantic movie. But that person wasn't real, and neither was the relationship." "What do you mean?" "We never dealt with anything difficult together. Never had to make hard choices or sacrifice for each other. When things got complicated, he ran. That's not love. That's just performance." Dale nodded. This was the most honest Linda had been about her relationship with Troy, and possibly the most honest she'd been about anything in years. "What about us? What is this?" Dale gestured between them. "This is 2 people who know each other's worst qualities, trying to build something real anyway." Linda smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. "It's not romantic, but might be more honest than what we had before." That afternoon, they began construction on Kevin's treehouse. Linda proved to be a capable assistant, careful, attentive to instruction, willing to admit when she didn't understand something. Dale found himself explaining techniques and concepts he'd never thought Linda would be interested in learning. "Why do you check the levels so often?" she asked as Dale adjusted a support beam for the third time. "Because if the foundation isn't level, everything built on top of it will be crooked. Small errors compound into big problems." Linda paused in her work, hammer in hand. "Is that a metaphor?" "It's carpentry. But yeah, it applies to other things too." They worked in comfortable silence for a while, with Kevin serving as enthusiastic apprentice and unofficial supervisor. The boy was clearly enjoying having both parents focused on the same project, working together without tension or conflict. Around 4 o'clock, Eleanor Whitman stopped by with fresh lemonade and cookies, a neighborly gesture that was also clearly an excuse to check on the Morrison family's progress. "This is wonderful to see," she said, watching Linda carefully measure a piece of trim. "Linda, you're becoming quite the carpenter. Dale's a good teacher, patient with beginners." Eleanor smiled. "Robert always says that the best teachers are the ones who remember what it's like to be learning." After Eleanor left, Linda set down her tools and looked at Dale seriously. "I need to tell you something." Dale felt his stomach tighten. Bad news usually started with those words. "Carol called this morning. She wanted to know if we were really reconciling or if you were just keeping me around for Kevin's sake." "What did you tell her?" "I told her I didn't know yet, but that I was hoping to find out." Dale studied his wife's face. 6 months ago, she'd been desperate, manipulative, willing to say anything to avoid consequences. The woman standing before him now seemed different, more grounded, less performative. "Linda, what do you want from this marriage?" "I want to be worthy of the second chance you've given me. I want to be the mother Kevin deserves. And I want to prove that I can be trusted with something precious. What if that's not enough? What if I can never love you the way I did before?" Linda was quiet for a long moment, watching Kevin organize tools in the workshop they'd set up under the oak tree. "Then I want to be someone who deserves love, even if I don't receive it. I want to become the person I pretended to be." That evening, after Kevin went to bed, Dale and Linda sat on the back porch reviewing their progress on the treehouse project. The structure was taking shape: solid foundation, square walls, level floors. It would be a good space for Kevin, built to last. "Dale, I have something for you." Linda handed him an envelope. "It's not much, but it's a start." Inside was a check for $2,000 and a detailed payment schedule. "I can't pay back everything I took, not quickly, but I can pay back some of it, and I want to start now." Dale studied the payment schedule. At the rate Linda had outlined, it would take her 8 years to repay the money she'd taken. But the plan was realistic, based on her current income and expenses. "Linda, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. Not because the contract requires it, but because I need to prove to myself that I can make things right." Dale folded the check and put it in his wallet. The money itself didn't matter. His business was successful enough that $2,000 was insignificant. But the gesture mattered. The commitment to accountability mattered. "Thank you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching fireflies begin to emerge in the gathering dusk. After a while, Linda spoke again. "Dale, do you think we'll make it?" "Make it how?" "As a family, as a couple, as people who choose to trust each other again." Dale considered the question carefully. The woman sitting beside him wasn't the woman he'd married 15 years ago, but she also wasn't the woman who'd betrayed him 2 years ago. She was someone new, someone forged by consequences and shaped by the choice to rebuild rather than run. "I think we might," he said finally, "but it won't be the marriage we had before." "What will it be?" Dale looked at the treehouse taking shape in their backyard, a structure built with careful planning, quality materials, and attention to detail. A structure designed to weather storms and last for generations. "It'll be something we built together, with our eyes open and our expectations realistic. Something that can survive whatever tests come next." Linda reached for his hand tentatively, and Dale allowed the contact. Her fingers were calloused now from months of learning to use tools, marked by honest work and genuine effort. "Dale, I love you. Not the way I did when we were young and everything was easy, but in a way that acknowledges what love actually costs." Dale squeezed her hand gently. I'm not ready to say those words yet, but I respect who you're becoming. That's enough for now. They sat together as full darkness settled around them. Two people who'd learned that the strongest foundations were built not on romantic fantasy, but on tested trust, proven commitment, and the willingness to keep building even when the work was hard. Dale Morrison had spent his career creating structures designed to last. For the first time in years, he believed he might be building something with Linda that could withstand whatever storms the future might bring. But he would never again mistake performance for authenticity or promises for proof. Trust would be earned through consistent action over time, not granted through words or tears. The treehouse would be finished in another week. The marriage would take much longer to complete, but both were being built on solid ground, with careful attention to detail and a commitment to quality that would serve them well for decades to come. Dale Morrison had learned that the most important skill in construction wasn't knowing how to build. It was knowing when something needed to be torn down and rebuilt from the foundation up. Some structures could be repaired. Others had to be completely demolished and reconstructed. The key was having the wisdom to know the difference and the courage to do what was necessary regardless of the cost. As Linda had learned, Dale Morrison always finished what he started. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Watchful Eyes of Roman Piper. Roman Piper had spent 32 years with the FBI learning one fundamental truth. People reveal themselves in the smallest moments. A twitch of the eye, a hastily covered smile, the way someone's hand trembles when they think no one is watching. He saw all of these things in his son-in-law, Aaron Bates, and had been cataloging them for the past 14 months. Roman sat in the leather armchair of his study, a room Margaret had decorated with his career commendations and family photos. At 63, his hair had gone silver, but his eyes remained sharp, the kind of sharp that had closed over 200 cases during his time in the Bureau's Criminal Investigative Division. Those same eyes now watched his wife of 38 years struggle to lift a water glass to her lips. "Let me help you, sweetheart," he said gently, crossing the room to steady her hand. Margaret smiled weakly, her once vibrant green eyes now clouded with exhaustion. The doctors called it a mysterious illness, something neurological, they said. Progressive weakness, cognitive decline, tremors. They'd run every test imaginable, but nothing conclusive ever emerged. Roman had his own theory, one he'd been quietly investigating for months. "Is Emily coming by today?" Margaret asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "She and Aaron are coming for dinner," Roman replied, studying his wife's face. She'd lost 20 pounds in the past year. Her hands shook constantly now. "How are you feeling?" "Tired. Always so tired." She leaned back against the pillows he'd arranged on the couch. "Roman, promise me you'll take care of Emily when I'm gone. She seems so different lately." Distant. Roman's jaw tightened. Different was an understatement. Their daughter had changed dramatically since marrying Aaron 3 years ago. The bright, independent woman who'd graduated top of her class from Georgetown Law had become withdrawn, almost hollow. She rarely visited without her husband, and when she did, she barely met her father's eyes. The doorbell rang at precisely 6 o'clock. Aaron was always punctual, another thing Roman had noted. Punctuality suggested planning, control. "I'll get it," Roman said, rising. He opened the door to find Aaron Bates standing on the porch with that practiced smile, all white teeth and empty warmth. Aaron was 35, handsome in a carefully maintained way, with dark hair always perfectly styled and clothes that cost more than they should for a man who claimed to be a freelance business consultant. "Roman, good to see you, old man," Aaron said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Emily followed behind him, her eyes downcast. "Honey, go check on your mother," Aaron instructed Emily with a gentle touch to her shoulder that Roman recognized as possessive. "I'll help Roman with dinner." Emily nodded mutely and disappeared into the living room. Roman led Aaron to the kitchen, every instinct screaming danger. This was predator behavior. Isolating, controlling, positioning. "So, how's Margaret doing?" Aaron asked, leaning against the counter with false casualness. "Emily's been so worried." "The doctors are still running tests," Roman replied, stirring the sauce on the stove. "Though I've been doing some research of my own." He watched Aaron's reflection in the kitchen window. There, just for a fraction of a second, a tightening around the eyes. "Oh, what kind of research?" "Toxicology mainly," Roman said evenly, turning to face his son-in-law. "Did you know that certain substances can mimic neurological diseases? Arsenic, for instance, or thallium. Small doses over time create symptoms that look like natural illness." The silence that followed lasted 3 heartbeats. Aaron's smile never wavered, but his right hand clenched briefly before relaxing. "That's fascinating," Aaron said smoothly. "You always were thorough. That FBI training, I suppose. Must be hard to turn that off, even in retirement." "I never turn it off," Roman replied, holding Aaron's gaze. "Old habits." Dinner was a tense affair. Margaret barely ate, and Emily pushed food around her plate, while Aaron dominated the conversation with stories about his latest business ventures. Roman noticed how Aaron always ensured Margaret drank her water, how he'd refresh her glass personally, how attentive he seemed. Too attentive. After they left, Roman helped Margaret to bed and waited until she fell asleep. Then he descended to his basement office, a room Margaret thought he used for woodworking. The workbench did have tools on it, but the real work happened at the desk in the corner, where Roman had assembled 14 months of evidence. Photographs covered a corkboard on the wall. Aaron entering a pharmacy in the next county. Aaron meeting with a man Roman had identified as Kevin Hanna, a known forger with ties to insurance fraud. Bank statements showing unusual transfers. And most damning, the result from the private laboratory where Roman had been sending samples of Margaret's food and water. Thallium. Small, consistent doses for over a year. Roman's hands trembled with rage as he reviewed the evidence. His wife was dying, and the man poisoning her was planning something bigger. Roman had discovered forged documents in Aaron's car during a chance visit, quitclaim deeds transferring this house into Aaron and Emily's names, dated and ready, just waiting for Margaret's signature or death. But Roman Piper hadn't spent 3 decades in the FBI without learning patience. He'd learned something else, too. The best way to catch a predator is to let them think they've won. He picked up his phone and dialed a familiar number. "Rick Mercer," answered a gruff voice. "Rick, it's Roman. I need your help with something. It's time to spring the trap." Chapter 2. The Funeral. The rain came down in sheets on the day they buried Margaret Piper, as if the heavens themselves mourned her passing. Roman stood at the graveside in his black suit, accepting condolences with a numbness that was only partially an act. Grief and fury warred in his chest. Grief for the woman he'd loved for 38 years. Fury at the monster who'd stolen her final months. Margaret had died 3 days ago, peacefully in her sleep according to the death certificate. Roman had been holding her hand. Her last words were about Emily. "Take care of our girl." He intended to do exactly that. The funeral was well attended. Margaret had been beloved, a retired teacher who'd touched countless lives. Roman noticed Aaron working the crowd with practiced ease, playing the devoted son-in-law, comforting Emily, who sobbed quietly into his shoulder. To everyone else, Aaron looked like a pillar of support. To Roman, he looked like a spider admiring its web. "I'm so sorry for your loss, Roman," said Stanley Little, approaching with genuine sympathy in his eyes. Stanley was a forensic toxicologist Roman had worked with on dozens of cases. He'd been the one to confirm the thallium poisoning. "Thank you, Stanley," Roman replied quietly. "Is everything ready?" "All documented and logged. When you give the word, we can move forward." Roman nodded slightly, then turned his attention back to the ceremony as the priest delivered final prayers. He watched Aaron throughout, noting every detail. The way Aaron checked his watch. The way he smiled when he thought no one was looking. The way he whispered something to Emily that made her flinch. After the burial, people gathered at the Piper house for the reception. Women from Margaret's book club brought casseroles. Former colleagues from Roman's FBI days offered quiet support. And through it all, Aaron played his part perfectly, helping serve food, sharing memories of Margaret, squeezing Emily's hand in what looked like comfort, but Roman recognized as control. "This house is too big for you now, Roman," Aaron said during a quiet moment in the kitchen. Others might have heard concern. Roman heard calculation. "You should think about downsizing. Emily and I will be happy to help you sell. Find something more manageable." "That's thoughtful," Roman replied evenly. "But I'm not ready to leave the home Margaret and I built together. Not yet." Of course," Aaron agreed too quickly. "Just know we're here for you. Family takes care of family, right?" By 9 o'clock, the last guests had departed. Roman stood at the window watching Aaron's BMW pull away, Emily in the passenger seat, her face pale in the streetlight. Rick Mercer emerged from the study where he'd been waiting. Rick was 58, built like a bulldog, with a face that had seen too many bad things to be surprised by much anymore. They'd worked together on organized crime cases for 15 years before Rick moved to local detective work. "You sure about this?" Rick asked. "I've never been more sure of anything," Roman replied. "Margaret deserved better than to have her final months stolen by that parasite. And Emily deserves to be free of him. You know this could get messy. Aaron's going to fight." Roman's expression hardened. "Let him fight. I've been building this case for 14 months. I have him on murder, fraud, forgery, and that's just the start. What I found out about Kevin Hanna and Aaron's past. If I'm right, we're looking at a pattern. This isn't the first time he's done this. What do you need from me? Patience. And backup when I call. He's going to make his move soon, probably within the week. When he does, I want everything ready to drop on him like a hammer." Rick nodded grimly. "The boys at the precinct owe you favors going back years. We'll be ready." After Rick left, Roman walked through his home, each room filled with memories of Margaret. He stopped at her piano in the music room, running his fingers over the keys she'd played every evening. Rage threatened to overwhelm him, but he pushed it down, channeled it into focus. This was what he'd trained for his entire career, to hunt predators who thought they were smarter than everyone else. Aaron Bates was about to learn that Roman Piper had been hunting him from the beginning, and the trap was already sprung. Aaron just didn't know it yet. Roman pulled out his phone and reviewed the text message that had come in during the funeral. It was from Dwight Bishop, his attorney. "Documents are ready. House is protected under trust. Impossible to transfer without your explicit in-person consent with witnesses. Any forgery will be immediately flagged." Roman smiled grimly. Let Aaron try. He spent the night organizing evidence files, preparing for what he knew was coming. Aaron would wait a few days to maintain appearances, but not long. Men like him were impatient once they thought the prize was within reach. 3 days later, Roman was proven right. Chapter 3. The Lockout. Roman returned from Margaret's grave on a gray Thursday afternoon, his arms laden with fresh flowers he'd placed at her headstone. The house looked the same from the outside. The Victorian-style home they'd purchased 40 years ago, every shingle and shutter filled with memories. But something was wrong. He felt it immediately. The front door didn't open with his key. The lock had been changed. Roman stood on his own porch, key in hand, a cold fury settling over him like ice water. So this was it, the final move. He'd expected it, planned for it, but the sheer audacity still managed to impress him in the worst way possible. He rang the doorbell, his own doorbell. The door opened, and there stood Aaron Bates, wearing jeans and a smug smile that didn't reach his eyes. Behind him, Roman could see Emily sitting on the couch, her face turned away. "Roman," Aaron said with false surprise. "What are you doing here?" "I live here," Roman replied calmly, though his hands clenched at his sides. "Why won't my key work?" Aaron leaned against the doorframe with practiced casualness. "About that, Emily and I have been talking, and we think it's time for some changes. New locks, old man. This is our house now." The words hung in the air like poison. Roman forced himself to remain calm, to play the part. "What are you talking about? This is my house." "Was your house," Aaron corrected, pulling a folded document from his pocket. "Margaret signed a quitclaim deed before she died. transferring the property to Emily. And Emily, being the devoted wife she is, added my name to the title. It's all legal. You can check with any lawyer you want. Roman saw the forged signature on the document Aaron waved at him. A decent fake of Margaret's handwriting, but Roman had the real Margaret's will safely stored with Dwight Bishop, explicitly leaving everything to Roman with provisions for Emily only after Roman's death. "You can't do this," Roman said, his voice low and dangerous. "I just did," Aaron replied, his smile widening. "Look, I get it. This is hard for you. Losing your wife, now losing your house. But Emily and I need space to start our family. And frankly, you're just a painful reminder of what she's lost. So here's what's going to happen." He disappeared inside for a moment and returned with Roman's suitcase, packed hastily with some of Roman's clothes. "Sleep in your car. Find a motel. I don't care, but you're not staying here anymore." Aaron threw the suitcase onto the porch. It landed at Roman's feet with a thud. For a long moment, Roman stared at his son-in-law. He could see it in Aaron's eyes, the triumph, the absolute certainty that he'd won. This was what Aaron had been planning all along. Marry the only daughter, poison the mother, take the house, probably collect on Margaret's life insurance too. Emily appeared in the doorway behind Aaron, her face streaked with tears. "Dad, I'm sorry Emily, go back inside," Aaron commanded sharply. She flinched and obeyed. Roman smiled. It was a cold, calculated smile that made Aaron's expression flicker with uncertainty for just a moment. "Is something funny, old man?" Aaron challenged. "I was just thinking," Roman said quietly, pulling out his phone, "about how I spent 32 years with the FBI. How many criminals I put away who thought they were smarter than everyone else. How they all had that same look you have right now. That certainty they'd gotten away with it." He dialed a number. "You know what they all had in common?" Aaron's smile was fading now. "What are you doing?" "They were all wrong," Roman replied. The phone rang once, twice. "Hello. Yes, it's time. Bring everything. I'll meet you here in 10 minutes. He ended the call and picked up his suitcase, meeting Aaron's eyes with a look that had made hardened criminals confess. "I'm going to come back in exactly 10 minutes, Aaron, and I'm bringing someone with me. When you see who it is, you're going to understand just how badly you miscalculated." "You're bluffing," Aaron said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "Am I?" Roman turned and walked toward his car, calling back over his shoulder. 10 minutes. "I'd suggest you think about everything you've done over the past 14 months. Every single thing. Because the person I'm bringing knows all of it." He drove around the block and parked, waiting. His phone rang almost immediately. Rick Mercer. "Roman, I'm 5 minutes out with Stanley and Dwight. We've got the forensic evidence, the forged documents, and I pulled some interesting files on Aaron's past. You were right. This isn't his first rodeo. We found records of a previous wife in Nevada who died under suspicious circumstances 5 years ago. Insurance payout of $500,000. Roman's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "Has the warrant been issued?" "Judge signed an hour ago. We've got him on suspicion of murder, fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. The Nevada detectives are reopening their case too." "And Roman?" Kevin Hanna flipped. "He's willing to testify about everything Aaron had him forge in exchange for a reduced sentence." "Good. See you in 5 minutes." Roman sat in his car, watching his house through the window. He could see shadows moving inside. Aaron pacing, probably arguing with Emily. The man was panicking now, trying to figure out what Roman knew, who he'd called. He thought about Margaret, about her final month stolen by poison. He thought about Emily, manipulated and controlled by a sociopath. He thought about Aaron's smug face as he threw that suitcase onto the porch. The rage was still there, cold and focused. But beneath it was something else, satisfaction. Because Roman Piper had learned long ago that justice wasn't about revenge, it was about patience, evidence, and playing the long game. And Aaron Bates's game was about to end. 3 cars pulled up to the curb. Rick Mercer's unmarked police sedan, Stanley Little's SUV, and Dwight Bishop's Mercedes. Roman stepped out of his car as they approached. "Ready?" Rick asked. "Let's go finish this," Roman replied. They walked up the path to Roman's house together. 5 men who represented the complete dismantling of Aaron Bates's carefully constructed lies. Roman rang the doorbell again. This time when Aaron opened it, Roman saw true fear flash across his face. Aaron's eyes went wide as he recognized Rick Mercer, saw the badge, saw the others behind them. "Hello, Aaron," Roman said calmly. "I believe you know Detective Mercer. And this is Stanley Little, forensic toxicologist, and Dwight Bishop, my attorney. We need to talk about several things. Margaret's murder, insurance fraud, forgery, and let's not forget your previous wife in Nevada, Sarah Bates, wasn't it? The one who also died mysteriously and left you a nice insurance payout." The color drained from Aaron's face. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. "No," he finally whispered. "That's impossible. You can't. How did you?" "I'm an FBI investigator, Aaron," Roman said quietly. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice when someone started poisoning my wife?" Chapter 4, 14 months ago. The story of how Roman Piper built his case began 14 months before the lockout, on a warm evening in August when he first truly looked at his son-in-law and saw a killer. It was Emily's 30th birthday dinner. Margaret had spent all day cooking Emily's favorites, and the house smelled of roast chicken and apple pie. Aaron had arrived early, offering to help set up, and Roman had watched him move through the kitchen with an ease that seemed off. Too familiar. Too comfortable in someone else's home. "Let me get Margaret something to drink," Aaron had said, opening the refrigerator without asking where things were. She must be tired from all this cooking. He poured a glass of water for Margaret, and Roman had seen it. A slight hesitation, Aaron's hand moving to his pocket and back so quickly it was almost imperceptible. Roman, trained to notice micro-expressions and suspicious behavior, felt his instincts scream. After dinner, while everyone was in the living room, Roman had slipped back into the kitchen and found the water glass, still half full. He'd poured it into a sample bottle he kept in his car, old habits from his evidence collection days. The first lab results came back 3 days later. Thallium sulfate, a known poison that mimics neurological disease. Small dose, but consistent with long-term poisoning. Roman had stood in his basement office, staring at that report, and felt his world shift. His wife was being murdered, slowly, methodically, and the killer was his daughter's husband. Instead of confronting Aaron immediately, Roman did what he'd done for 32 years. He started investigating. He called in favors with former colleagues. Stanley Little had agreed to analyze samples whenever Roman could obtain them. Rick Mercer had opened an unofficial file. Dwight Bishop had quietly secured the house and Margaret's assets in an ironclad trust. Roman had installed hidden cameras in strategic locations. He tracked Aaron's movements. He dug into Aaron's past and found disturbing patterns. Aaron Bates wasn't even his real name. He'd legally changed it 7 years ago from Aaron Kovac. Before that, he'd been married to Sarah Henderson in Las Vegas. Sarah had died at 31 of mysterious neurological complications. The insurance payout was $500,000. Aaron had disappeared for 2 years after that, resurfacing with a new name and a cleaned-up background. But Roman had found the truth. He'd found 3 other instances where Aaron had dated wealthy women, relationships that ended when the women suddenly cut him off, usually after discovering financial irregularities. None had pressed charges. Aaron was too smart, too charming, too good at talking his way out. Kevin Hanna had been harder to track down. Aaron's accomplice was a forger who specialized in estate documents, well, alterations and identity changes. Roman had finally located him through old FBI databases and watched as Aaron met with Kevin multiple times over the past year, always paying cash. The evidence accumulated day by day. Video of Aaron putting something in Margaret's food. Bank records showing Kevin Hanna's payments. Margaret's medical symptoms worsening precisely in correlation with Aaron's visits. The forged quitclaim deed drafted and waiting. And all the while, Roman had played the oblivious old man. He let Aaron think he suspected nothing. He'd watched his wife decline, knowing what was happening but unable to stop it without tipping his hand. That was the hardest part, watching Margaret suffer while he built an airtight case. "Why didn't you save her?" Rick had asked one night when Roman broke down in the basement office. "Because if I moved too soon, he'd disappear like he did before," Roman had said through tears. And Emily would be next. Or some other innocent woman. I need to end this permanently. I need him buried so deep he never hurts anyone again. Margaret had known toward the end. Roman had told her everything one night when she was lucid. She'd cried, not for herself, but for Emily. "Save our daughter," she'd whispered. "That monster has his claws in her. Promise me you'll free her." "I promise," Roman had said. Margaret's death had been the catalyst. The autopsy Roman had privately arranged showed lethal levels of thallium. The official autopsy, which Aaron had pushed for cremation to avoid, had been flagged by the medical examiner, an old colleague of Stanley's who knew to look for poison. Now, standing on his porch with Aaron's face white with terror, Roman felt the weight of those 14 months settle into grim satisfaction. Every sleepless night, every moment of watching his wife suffer, every second of playing the fool, it had all led to this. Chapter 5. The Impossible Return. "Aaron Bates, you're under arrest for the murder of Margaret Piper," Rick Mercer said, pulling out handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." "Wait." Aaron stumbled backward into the house. "This is insane. You can't prove." "Actually, we can prove everything," Stanley Little said, stepping forward with a thick folder. "I have 14 months of toxicology reports showing consistent thallium poisoning in your mother-in-law's food and water. We have you on video administering the poison. We have the source traced to a purchase you made using a fake ID. And we have communications between you and Kevin Hanna planning this entire scheme." Aaron's eyes darted between them, looking for an escape. "Emily, tell them this is crazy." Emily appeared from the living room, her face streaked with tears, holding a document and shaking hands. "Is this real, Aaron? Did you kill my mother?" "Baby, no. They're lying. They're trying to frame me." "I found this in your office," Emily said, her voice breaking. "A life insurance policy on my mother. $2 million. With you listed as a beneficiary through me. When were you going to tell me about this?" "I can explain. And these," she continued, pulling out more papers. "Forged documents transferring Mom and Dad's assets. My signature that I never signed." "Aaron, what did you do?" "Everything I did for us," Aaron shouted, desperation cracking through his facade. "Your father was going to leave everything to charity. You would have gotten nothing. I was securing our future." "By murdering my mother?" Emily's voice rose to a scream. "By poisoning her for over a year." The mask finally shattered completely. Aaron's handsome face twisted into something ugly, something reptilian. "She was dying anyway. The poison just sped it up. And yes, I married you for the money, your family's precious house, your inheritance, all of it. You were always just a means to an end, Emily. A pathetic, weak means to an end." The slap echoed through the house. Emily's hand connected with Aaron's face so hard he stumbled. Then she turned to her father, sobbing. "Daddy, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." Roman pulled his daughter into his arms, holding her as she broke down. Over her shoulder, he watched Rick Mercer cuff Aaron, who was still sputtering denials and threats. "You'll never make this stick." Aaron snarled. "I'll get the best lawyers. Actually, Dwight Bishop spoke for the first time, his lawyer's voice cold and precise. "You won't. You see, I represent the Piper estate, and I've been documenting every fraudulent document you've filed, every forged signature, every illegal transfer. The house was never yours. The insurance policy you try to claim? Flagged as fraudulent. The bank accounts? Frozen. You have nothing, Mr. Bates. Or should I say, Mr. Kovac?" Aaron froze at his real name. "Oh yes," Roman said quietly. "We know everything. About Sarah Henderson. About the other women you scammed. About your entire operation. Nevada wants you for Sarah's murder. The FBI's fraud division wants you for interstate wire fraud. And Detective Mercer here wants you for Margaret's murder. You're going to spend the rest of your life in prison, and that's if you're lucky. Some states still have the death penalty for murder." "No," Aaron whispered. "No, this isn't how this ends. I'm smarter than all of you. I planned everything perfectly." "You planned everything perfectly except for one thing," Roman replied. "You underestimated me. You thought I was just a grieving old man. But I was an FBI investigator for 3 decades, Aaron. I've taken down organized crime bosses, serial killers, and con artists far more sophisticated than you. Did you really think I wouldn't notice what you were doing to my wife? Rick pulled Aaron toward the door. Let's go. We got a cell waiting for you. Wait, Roman said. There's one more person who wants to see him. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Manuel, we're ready for you. 2 minutes later, another car pulled up. A man in his 40s stepped out, his face hardened by years in prison. He walked up the path with purpose. Aaron's face went white as a sheet. No, you're supposed to be dead. Manuel Blackwell finished. That's what you told the police when you testified against me, isn't it? That I was the one who killed Sarah? That you were the innocent husband who had no idea your business partner was a murderer? Roman watched Aaron's complete psychological collapse with cold satisfaction. Manuel Blackwell was Aaron's former partner from the Las Vegas days, the man Aaron had framed for Sarah's murder to avoid suspicion himself. Manuel had served 8 years in prison before new evidence had exonerated him 3 months ago. Roman had found Manuel through FBI records and had spent weeks convincing him to help. Not that Manuel needed much convincing. He wanted revenge on Aaron as much as Roman did. I've been looking for you for a long time, Aaron, Manuel said softly. 8 years in prison for a murder I didn't commit. 8 years while you lived free, killed again, and played your sick games. But Roman here, he gave me something better than revenge. He gave me justice. I'm testifying against you in Nevada, Manuel continued. And in this case, I'm going to tell them everything about how you operate, how you select your victims, how you poison them slowly, so it looks natural. I'm going to make sure you never see daylight again. Aaron lunged at Manuel, screaming incoherently, but Rick and another officer who'd arrived subdued him quickly. They dragged him toward the police car, Aaron's shouts echoing down the quiet suburban street. You'll pay for this, Roman. All of you. I'll get out, and I'll destroy you. The car door slammed, cutting off his threats. Roman stood on his porch, Emily still crying in his arms, and watched them drive away. Neighbors had come out to watch the spectacle, whispers spreading through the crowd. He didn't care. Let them talk. Justice was being served. Chapter 6. The Unraveling. The police station was chaos. Roman sat in Rick Mercer's office, Emily beside him, watching through the window as Aaron Bates was processed. Aaron was still shouting, demanding lawyers, making threats. But his bravado was cracking. Roman could see it in the panic in his eyes. We got him cold, Rick said, reviewing the evidence files spread across his desk. 14 months of documented poisoning, video evidence, financial records, Kevin Hanna's testimony, Manuel Blackwell's testimony, the Nevada case. It's the most airtight case I've seen in 20 years. What about my mom's body? Emily asked quietly, her voice hoarse from crying. Did she really suffer because of him? Stanley Little, who joined them, spoke gently. The thallium poisoning would have caused neurological symptoms, weakness, tremors, confusion. But Roman made sure she had pain management. And in the end, the dose Aaron gave her was lethal but quick. She didn't suffer in those final hours. Emily broke down again, and Roman held her. He felt rage threatening to overwhelm him again, but he pushed it down. Aaron would pay. That was what mattered. There's more you need to know, Rick said, pulling out another file. We've been digging deeper into Aaron's past. We found 2 more potential victims. A woman in Arizona who dated him for 6 months before dying in a car accident. Brake line failure that was ruled mechanical. And another in Oregon who survived, but had a mysterious illness that ended when Aaron left her. He's a serial killer, Roman said flatly. That's exactly what he is, Rick agreed. And thanks to your investigation, we have the evidence to prove it. The FBI is taking over the case because it crosses state lines. They're charging him with multiple counts of first-degree murder, attempted murder, wire fraud, insurance fraud, and about a dozen other charges. A commotion outside the office drew their attention. Through the window, they could see Aaron being led to an interrogation room. He looked diminished now, the handsome charm completely stripped away to reveal the calculating predator beneath. I want to talk to him, Roman said. Rick frowned. Roman, That's not a good idea. You're emotionally involved. I need to look him in the eye, Roman interrupted. I need him to know that he didn't win, that he never had a chance. After a moment, Rick nodded. 5 minutes. I'll be right outside. Roman entered the interrogation room alone. Aaron sat handcuffed to the table, his expensive shirt rumpled, his perfect hair disheveled. When he saw Roman, hatred flashed in his eyes. Come to gloat, old man. I came to understand, Roman replied, sitting across from him. Why Margaret? Why my family? Aaron laughed bitterly. Why not? You had everything I wanted. Money, property, a comfortable life. Emily was easy to manipulate, daddy issues, desperate for approval. And Margaret was the perfect target. Old, trusting, naive. She was a good woman. She didn't deserve what you did to her. Nobody deserves anything, Aaron spat. You take what you can get in this world. I saw an opportunity, and I took it. If you hadn't been so damn nosy, I would have gotten away with it too. No, you wouldn't have, Roman said calmly. You made mistakes from the beginning. You got sloppy with Sarah in Nevada. You left trails with Kevin Hanna. You underestimated me from the start. Men like you always do. You think everyone else is as immoral as you are. You can't imagine that someone might actually love their spouse enough to notice every detail, to spend 14 months building a case while watching them die. You're sick, Aaron said. You watch her suffer for 14 months just to catch me? What kind of husband does that? The kind who wanted to make sure you never hurt anyone else ever again, Roman replied. If I'd moved too soon, you would have disappeared like before. You would have found another Emily, another Margaret. I couldn't let that happen. So yes, I watched my wife die. I documented every moment of your crime. And now you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison knowing that you lost. Not to the FBI, not to the police. To an old man you thought you could outsmart. Aaron's face contorted with rage. I'll get out. I'll appeal. You'll die in prison, Roman interrupted. Alone. Forgotten. A cautionary tale about a mediocre con man who thought he was clever. That's your legacy, Aaron. Not wealth. Not success. Just a cell and the knowledge that you failed. He stood to leave. Wait, Aaron said. And for the first time, Roman heard genuine fear in his voice. What about Emily? What will you tell her about me? Roman turned back, his expression hard. I'll tell her the truth. That you never loved her. That you used her. That you murdered her mother. And I'll help her heal from the damage you did. She's young, Aaron. She'll recover. She'll find someone who actually loves her. She'll have the life you tried to steal from her. And you'll have nothing but memories of what you almost got away with. He left Aaron sitting there, the weight of his failures crushing him. Outside, Emily was waiting. Is it really over, Dad? It's over, sweetheart. He can't hurt us anymore. But Roman knew it wasn't entirely over. There was still the trial to endure, the media attention, the painful process of rebuilding their lives. There was still grief to work through, trauma to heal. And there was still one more move to make. Chapter 7. The Trial. 6 months later, the trial of Aaron Bates, now being referred to as Aaron Kovac in all official proceedings, began in a packed courthouse. The media had descended on the case like vultures, calling him the thallium killer and the marriage murderer. Roman sat in the front row every single day, Emily beside him. She'd been in therapy since Aaron's arrest, slowly recovering from the psychological abuse she'd endured. The bright, strong woman she'd once been was returning, piece by piece. The prosecution's case was devastating. Stanley Little testified about the toxicology evidence, explaining in gruesome detail how thallium poisoning worked and how Aaron had administered it consistently for over a year. The jury looked physically ill as they viewed the video evidence of Aaron dosing Margaret's food and water. Kevin Hanna, looking diminished in his orange jumpsuit, testified about all the documents he'd forged for Aaron: quitclaim deeds, wills, insurance beneficiary forms. He detailed how Aaron had paid him to create fake IDs for purchasing thallium sulfate. Manuel Blackwell's testimony was perhaps the most damning. He described Sarah Henderson's death in detail, how Aaron had poisoned her exactly the same way, how he'd framed Manuel to avoid suspicion, how he'd collected the insurance money and disappeared. He told me once, Manuel said from the stand, his voice shaking with controlled anger, That marriage was just a long con. Find someone with assets, make them fall in love with you, get control of their money, and get out. Sarah wasn't a person to him. She was a mark. And when I figured out what he'd done and confronted him, he set me up to take the fall. Aaron's defense attorney, a public defender because all of Aaron's assets had been seized, tried to argue that the evidence was circumstantial, that Aaron had been framed, that there was no concrete proof of intent. But the jury wasn't buying it. The evidence was too overwhelming, too methodical. When Emily took the stand, the courtroom went silent. She'd been granted immunity for any potential unknowing involvement, and she testified about the psychological manipulation, the isolation, the gradual transformation from loving husband to controlling monster. "He made me doubt my own father," she said, crying. "He told me Dad was paranoid, that he was too old to manage his own affairs, that he needed to take control for his own good. I believed him because I loved him, and all the while, he was murdering my mother." Aaron tried to maintain his composure, but Roman could see the cracks. When Roman himself took the stand, Aaron finally broke. Roman detailed his investigation with clinical precision. Every piece of evidence, every surveillance photo, every documented instance of poisoning. He explained how he'd built the case slowly, carefully, knowing he had to be absolutely certain before striking. "You watched your wife die for 14 months and did nothing," the defense attorney challenged. "I watched my wife be murdered for 14 months and built an airtight case against her killer," Roman corrected coldly. "If I had confronted him immediately, he would have fled, changed his identity again, and found another victim. My wife made me promise to save our daughter and prevent him from hurting anyone else. I kept that promise." The defense attorney had no response. But then Aaron snapped. He stood up in court, screaming at Roman. "You think you're so smart? You think you won? I should have killed you too. I should have poisoned you both. You stole my life. That house should have been mine. Everything should have been mine." The outburst sealed his fate. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Chapter 8. The Sentencing. The sentencing hearing 3 weeks later was equally cathartic and painful. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Terrence Rice, "Call me Judge Rice," she'd said, had reviewed every piece of evidence personally. "Mr. Kovac," she began, and Roman noted that she refused to use the fake name Aaron had adopted. "I have been a judge for 23 years. In that time, I have seen many terrible crimes. But what you did, the premeditated, calculated murder of a kind woman who welcomed you into her family, ranks among the worst I have encountered." Aaron sat stone-faced, his handcuffs rattling as he shifted. "You didn't just kill Margaret Piper," Judge Rice continued. "You tortured her. You poisoned her slowly, watching her deteriorate, gaslighting her family, stealing her final months. And you did this not out of passion or desperation, but out of pure greed. You are a predator who views other human beings as resources to be exploited." The judge listed the counts. First-degree murder in the death of Margaret Piper. First-degree murder in the death of Sarah Henderson. Nevada had transferred jurisdiction. Attempted murder in Oregon. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy. The list went on. "For the murder of Margaret Piper alone, I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the murder of Sarah Henderson, a consecutive life sentence without the possibility of parole. Additionally, you will serve 20 years for each count of fraud and forgery, to run consecutively." The math was simple. Aaron would spend at least 2 lifetimes in prison. Furthermore, Judge Rice added, "I am recommending that you be housed in maximum security, isolated from the general prison population. Not for your protection, but because I don't trust you not to manipulate other inmates. You are a danger to everyone around you." Aaron finally broke. He screamed, lunged at the bench, had to be physically restrained by bailiffs. As they dragged him from the courtroom, he was still ranting about injustice, about how he'd been smarter than all of them, about how he would appeal. Emily was crying, but this time they were tears of relief. Roman put his arm around her. "It's really over now, isn't it, Dad? It's really over, sweetheart." Outside the courthouse, reporters mobbed them with questions. Rick Mercer acted as spokesman, giving a brief statement about justice being served. Roman and Emily slipped away to Rick's car, avoiding the cameras. But there was one more stop to make before they could truly move forward. Chapter 9. Margaret's Promise. They returned to Margaret's grave at sunset. Roman carried fresh lilies, her favorite flowers. Emily walked beside him, stronger now than she'd been 6 months ago, but still healing. The cemetery was quiet except for birdsong. They stood before the headstone, Margaret and Piper. Beloved wife, mother, teacher, friend. Her love lives on. Roman knelt and placed the flowers gently against the stone. It's done, sweetheart. He can't hurt anyone else now. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison, alone and forgotten. Emily knelt beside him. I'm so sorry, Mom. I should have seen what he was. I should have protected you. Your mother never blamed you, Roman said gently. She knew how manipulative he was. The night before she died, she told me her only regret was that she wouldn't be here to see you recover from him. She made me promise to save you, and I like to think I kept that promise. You did, Dad. You saved me from him, and you made sure Mom got justice. They sat there for a long time, watching the sun set over the cemetery. Finally, Roman spoke again. I learned something through all of this. Revenge isn't about making someone suffer. It's about making sure they can never hurt anyone again. For 14 months, I wanted to kill Aaron with my bare hands. But that would have made me like him. Instead, I used the law, used evidence, used the very system I served for 32 years. And now he's gone forever, not because I murdered him, but because I proved what he was. Mom would be proud of you, Emily said. She would be proud of both of us. You testified against him. You stood up to him. That took courage. Emily wiped her eyes. What happens now? I mean to us. Roman considered this. The house, their house, was theirs again, legally and completely. Aaron's attempts at fraud had been thoroughly dismantled. Margaret's will had been executed properly, leaving everything to Roman with Emily as the sole beneficiary after his death. But the house felt different now. Tainted. I've been thinking about that, Roman said. The house has too many bad memories now. What if we sold it, used the money to start over? We could both move somewhere new. You could go back to practicing law. I know you gave that up for Aaron. I could, I don't know, maybe do some consulting work. Help other families who are being victimized by people like Aaron. Emily looked at him with surprise. You'd really sell the house? All those memories of Mom. The memories of your mother aren't in the house, Roman replied. They're in here. He tapped his chest. And in you. She lives on through us, through the love she taught us, through the strength she gave us. We don't need a building to remember her. Emily nodded slowly. Actually, I think that's a good idea. A fresh start. For both of us. Over the next few weeks, they made arrangements. The house sold quickly. Roman donated a portion of the proceeds to a foundation for domestic abuse survivors in Margaret's name. Emily enrolled in a program to reinstate her law license, specializing in helping victims of financial fraud and abuse. Roman, true to his word, started consulting on cold cases involving potential poisoning or insurance fraud. He worked with Rick Mercer and the FBI, using his expertise to identify patterns similar to Aaron's methods. They found 3 more potential cases, all now being reinvestigated. Manuel Blackwell, after being fully exonerated and compensated for his wrongful imprisonment, became an advocate for criminal justice reform. He and Roman became unlikely friends, united by their victory over Aaron. 6 months after the trial, Emily met someone new, a kind, genuine man named Dwight Bishop Jr., the son of Roman's attorney. Roman watched them carefully at first, but saw immediately that Dwight Jr. was nothing like Aaron. He treated Emily with respect, encouraged her career, supported her healing. 1 year after Margaret's death, Roman stood in a new apartment across town, looking at a photograph of his wife. She was laughing in the picture, surrounded by her garden, her eyes bright with joy. We did it, Margaret, he said quietly. Emily's safe. Aaron's locked away forever, and we stopped him from hurting anyone else. I kept my promise. His phone rang. Rick Mercer. Roman, we got another one. Woman in Florida, same pattern as Aaron. Husband slowly poisoning her, forging documents. The family suspects but can't prove it. They need someone who understands how these predators work. Roman looked at Margaret's picture one more time, then picked up his notebook. Send me the details. I'm on it. Because that was the real victory, he realized. Not just stopping Aaron, but using what he'd learned to protect others. Turning his pain into purpose. Transforming his grief into justice. Aaron Bates had taken Margaret from him. But in doing so, he created something he never anticipated. A dedicated hunter of predators like himself. Roman would spend the rest of his life making sure men like Aaron were caught before they could destroy more families. It was what Margaret would have wanted. It was what justice demanded. And Roman Piper had always been a man who kept his promises. Epilogue. 5 years later, Roman Piper stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., addressing a conference of law enforcement officials on identifying and prosecuting serial poisoners. His work had led to the conviction of 12 more predators like Aaron, saving countless lives. Emily sat in the front row, now married to Dwight Jr. and pregnant with her first child. She'd become a successful attorney specializing in elder abuse and fraud cases. Aaron Kovac remained in maximum security